About to get started, so if you haven't got your seat yet, please, there's plenty of seating, have a seat, and we'll get started here shortly as soon as we see these last few people coming in, settle down and finish registration. Thank you all. We're going to go ahead and get started. I first want to start by thanking you all who have come out today on this lovely Saturday afternoon to be here with us to have a great dialogue from our wonderful community representatives. Today we have Supervisor Candace Andersen, who represents District 2, Ali Saidi from the District Attorney's Office. See, someone to put my cue card up there that it ingrained in and tattooed on my forehead. Yes, sorry for the confusion there. And Claudia Jimenez with the Contra Costa County Social Justice Group. And I want to thank them for being here with us today. All three are wonderful community providers here, and I have the pleasure of knowing and working with them, so I'm happy to be here to moderate. My name is Ana Marie Avila Farias. I'm the former Vice Mayor of the City of Martinez and a current gubernatorial appointee, and I will be moderating today's event. Just some logistical pieces. The restrooms are to my right over here, your left, depending on where you're sitting. We will be doing questions, answers towards the end. We are going to give each of our guests 15-20 minutes to speak on the items here, and then you can fill out question cards, which are in the back of the room, and they'll be passed up and we will ask the questions. I'm going to go ahead and read little brief bios on each of our guests. Ali Saidi is the Deputy Public Defender and a Civil Rights Advocate in Contra Costa County. Mr. Saidi specializes in the intersection between immigration law and criminal law. Ali received his BA from the University of California, Berkeley, and his JD from the University of Michigan Law. He worked for Contra Costa County Public Defender's Office for several years before going into private practice, where he spent over a decade practicing both criminal defense and deportation defense. Mr. Saidi has also represented hundreds of individuals charged with serious crimes in California state courts and has represented non-citizens in deportation and removal proceedings in immigration court, before the Board of Immigration Appeals and before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Mr. Saidi currently works for the Contra Costa County Public Defender's Office, where he serves as the county first Deputy Public Defender of Immigration Attorney. Please give him a round of applause and welcome him. Ms. Claudia Jimenez is a facilitator of the Contra Costa County Racial Justice Coalition, a broad coalition of organizations and individuals committed to eliminating racial inequities in Contra Costa County. As a former immigrants' rights organizer of Contra Costa Interfaith Supporting Community Organization, Claudia has led many campaigns positively impacting the rights of immigrants and residents of Contra Costa County. Thank you. Candace Andersen has been the supervisor for Contra Costa County District 2 since June of 2012. She previously was the Danville Town Council, serving 2 terms as mayor. Supervisor Andersen received a BA in Public Policy and Juris Doctorate from Brigham Young University. She is an attorney, a licensed attorney practicing law in California and Hawaii, and served as a prosecuting attorney as a civil practitioner. She put her legal career on hold to serve the community and raise her family. In her role as a county supervisor, Ms. Andersen currently sits on numerous boards, commissions, and committees. This includes the Association of Bay Area Governments, the Contra Costa Housing Authority, and the Family and Human Services Committee, and the Mental Health Commission. Thank you for joining us, and appreciate your time. And we'll start with Claudia Jimenez in discussion. No? Oh, I'm going to start with you. We'll start. Okay, Candace, we'll start with Candace. And again, you know, I appreciate everyone coming, and this is a very important topic in this county. And so we are all on different sides of the spectrum on this issue. And so again, this is in the spirit of being informed and obtaining dialogue and respecting everybody's viewpoints, no matter where we are on the issue. So I welcome everyone, and Candace.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm going to whip through some slides, some information about topics that I've been asked to address today. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about law enforcement and incarceration in Contra Costa County. We do have 3 detention facilities. The first one is our Martinez Detention Facility, which is a high security facility. We also have the West County Detention Facility that is a medium security facility, and then we have our Marsh Creek Detention Facility, which is our minimum security facility. And we do a lot of programs in Contra Costa County to really address the issues of recidivism. And I'm not going to go through all of these up here on the screen, but just sort of highlight that we have both inmate programs as well as reentry programs after someone is released from being incarcerated. The majority of our inmate programs really take place at the West County Detention Facility. That's where we have the classroom space, a very open area, and the ability to really provide in-depth approaches to various topics there. And then we have a lot of programs that we implement throughout the county, whether it be through our behavioral health up here, health services, and we have, of course, Public Defender does various early representation, clean slate, other programs like that, our Workforce Development Board to really help people get back working. And then we just created an Office of Reentry and Justice, and we started that this year. We've just moved into the new headquarters for that, really to do wraparound services of really how do we help lower our recidivism rate, how do we help individuals so they don't end up back in jail. And this, I'm going to switch over a little bit to racial justice for a moment. And this gives you a really helpful snapshot of the racial disparity we are encountering in Contra Costa County. And this slide was one that was very compelling for the entire Board of Supervisors to really motivate us to create a racial justice task force. And the slide here on the left gives you our approximate census. Of course, it deviates slightly from 2013. Purple is other races, about 19%, about 25% shows Hispanic Latino, 46% white Caucasian, and then just under 10% is the black population. And this is just countywide, our population. When you look at our criminal cases, you see that there's, of course, this shows you that 26% of our criminal cases are affecting our black members of our population, 41% white, 22% Hispanic Latino, then 11% other, which would be Pacific Islander, Asian, other groups included in that. Pre-trial, you still see this disparity here of 40% black, 34% white, 20% Latino, Hispanic. Juvenile probation, another huge disparity that we noted, with 41% of black youth making up our juvenile probation program, only 18% being white, 30% Latino, Hispanic. Adult probation, you still see, although it's a slightly lower number, you still are seeing this disparity. AB 109, and you'll be hearing more about AB 109. If you're not familiar with what that is, essentially about 6 years ago when we had overcrowding in state prisons and jails, the governor said, let's push some of that down to the county. And so the county has, both for incarceration purposes as well as probation purposes, the responsibility of having the low-level offenders, the non-violent, non-serious, non-sexual offenders. And so our AB 109 population also shows this disparity here. And then finally, jury appearance. And this isn't the appearance of the defendants in juries, it's who's on our juries. And what you see here is a very large, disproportionate white jurors are showing up, as opposed to members more representative of the people who are facing criminal trials. So that was a shocking number for all of us. I sat on public protection last year with John Joya, and we were very concerned, and this was a study that had started pre-recession but lost funding through the recession. And so the entire Board of Supervisors agreed we really needed to do something. And so we did create our County Racial Justice Task Force. It was formed last year. We have clearly stated up here what the mandate is: research and identify consensus measures within the county to reduce disparities in the criminal justice system, plan and oversee the implementation of the measures once identified, and then report back to the Board of Supervisors on progress being made. And so this is a huge step forward. Of course, we don't think it's just because we have bad cops out there arresting people of color. We know it goes much more back to children. It goes back to schools, to education. It goes back to health, welfare, all of these different factors, but we want to identify those. And so this task force has convened once already. It'll be meeting next week on May 3rd, open to the public. You're welcome to come at 1 o'clock at the County Administration Building. And this is the Racial Justice Task Force members. So we needed the stakeholders, those such as our Sheriff's Department, our Health Department, Probation Department, and then we have a lot of community-based organizations who are represented. We opened up an application process, had people apply, and we're very pleased to have a cross-section of individuals all across the county. We also do have a mental health representative because that's a critical component. As you'll be hearing me talk about right now, throughout the country, we have more mentally ill incarcerated in our jails than we do in hospitals. And this is a number that none of us like to see, and that's why we are taking various approaches to address this. In Contra Costa, we don't just look at the justice system, but we also look for a racial balance in our hiring. And so this slide shows you what our new hire data is for 14-15, 15-16. And when we see a disparity where we see, for example, that there may be slightly more, let's say there's a disparity. I think Hispanic right now is one of the greater disparities. We don't have as many Hispanics working in the county as we do living in the general population. Each year, the department where there is that disparity actually is required to come up with a plan of how they will be doing outreach in other languages, where they will be posting, where they will be out recruiting, so that we can try to come up with that balance. For many years, the county was under a consent decree, and that was after a lawsuit was filed almost 20 years ago requiring the county to report to a court every year how they were making progress in getting rid of some of these great disparities in our hiring. We're doing much better, and 2 years ago we were relieved from that responsibility by a court. And we also address a lot of the racial disparities in the county, particularly as it affects poverty, as it affects some of our immigrant population, just through some of these very basic programs, like our Contra Costa First 5, which is our preschool program, as well as our Head Start program, through our Contra Costa Health Services that has enrolled more and more immigrant children, particularly as they became eligible for Medi-Cal, regardless of their immigration status. We did implement Health Care for All, which is providing healthcare services, primary care to a select group of individuals who are not insured because they are not residents or they are not citizens of this country. We create a lot of training for implicit bias, and that is going through all of our justice partners. We make sure that they have this training as well as many of our other departments. And then finally, through our hiring outreach, as I talked about employment opportunity, we get a lot more racial parity within our county. So let's talk a little bit about the jail expansion, because this is one that comes up very often. Through this potential jail expansion, what I'm showing you here is our West County Detention Facility. And when it was built in the early 1990s, it was built with this additional pad here with the groundwork laid. The utilities were put forward, you had the sewer lines, the water lines, all of that, because it was anticipated that someday we would expand. And as we applied for this grant, and we'll find out in June whether or not we do get this $70 million jail grant, we were required to not add any additional beds. And so as part of this proposal, we would be decommissioning beds, so we would be removing 420 beds, primarily because we've been doubling up jail beds in Martinez, having 2 in a cell where we normally should have had 1, where it was built for 1. 416 would be added, and at the end, we would have 4 less beds. And as part of this grant, we are not allowed to add additional beds. And there's consensus on the Board of Supervisors that even when that requirement expires, we would not be adding additional beds and would not honor a request of the sheriff if he wanted to add beds. This is a very strong commitment to the community. We want less jail beds, but we want the type of jail beds that we need. And so some of the benefits of this jail expansion, those of you who have written me have probably seen these bullet points that I feel were so critical and why I supported this jail expansion. So did Supervisor Karen Mitchoff, so did Supervisor Federal Glover, so did Supervisor Diane Burgess. And the reason we were so concerned, as I mentioned, is we have a severe crisis in our county, in the state, in the country, with regard to the number of mentally ill people who are cycling through our jails. And so this provides us an opportunity to provide some comprehensive mental health to those who are temporarily incarcerated, including some of the more serious offenders. Currently, when we have someone who is severely mentally ill or an offender that, because of his gang affiliation, is not able to mingle with the rest of the jail population, they have to stay in Martinez where the services are extremely limited. And with this expansion, we would be able to provide additional services along with all of the workshops that I mentioned previously on one of our earlier slides. This would include a new special services unit, which provides, again, modern facilities for the day-to-day housing of people who are experiencing both short-term decompensation, detox, or just a need for stabilization. And as you can imagine, very often people showing up in jail might be addicted to something. They might have an episode of severe mental illness. They're not a candidate for just being put in, a supportive service home, but they do need to, for their safety, for the community's safety, be incarcerated, or the crime they committed was serious enough, and we want to have a way to treat them while they're in there. Incarcerated men with elevated risk for suicide will have different jail cells, which will allow for better monitoring of them, ensuring their safety while they're incarcerated. And inmates who are staying in Contra Costa rather than out of county. Most of the time when we have someone who is significantly mentally ill, oftentimes they are having to be placed out of county in a facility, which makes it harder for their family members to see them. It makes it more challenging for them as well. And the other benefit or another one of the benefits is that we will have, if this is built, touch visitation, where families will be able to have one-on-one skin-to-skin contact rather than just through a wall, which again will be beneficial not just to our mentally ill inmates, but to others as well. And so a lot of people have said to me, well, why can't you, if you're not adding any new jail beds, why can't you just turn some of our other facilities into them? And so we've looked at that, and we will likely, even in the interim, even if we get this jail grant, we are going to be doing some modifications in Martinez to better serve our mentally ill population. But essentially, for those of you who have been inside our Martinez detention facility, it's very small. It has a lot of big pillars that are in the way. It's not conducive to expanding. It's not conducive to providing the services that we need for the mentally ill. And currently there is a lack of adequate space. And renovating the West County Detention Facility, because this has come up as well, people saying, well, if you just got rid of your ICE contract, then you could use those beds for mentally ill people. The problem is the West County Detention Facility is a medium security jail. Inmates have, in essence, their keys to their own rooms. There's very thin wall construction. There are shared restroom facilities. For mentally ill individuals, you need to have a wet cell, a cell where there's a sink, where there's a toilet. And you can't have them mingling in with the rest of the jail population. And to retrofit one of our West County detention units would be considerably more than building what we are proposing at this time. And so we had the Sheriff's Department analyze that from all angles, and it really did not work given the security you need for these inmates, again, for their protection and potentially for the protection of other individuals. And so sometimes people, I don't take it terribly seriously, but they yell out, why aren't you building a jail in District 2? Why aren't you putting this jail out here? And of course the obvious response is, well, we have the path for it to be built in West County, and it would be much more expensive to build a separate jail out in District 2. But what I'm showing you from this map is how close I do have a major jail, almost twice the size of West County Detention Facility, just 3 miles from District 2. This is an aerial map of Dublin's, of Alameda County's jail facility. It is about 8 miles from my house. I can be at that jail in about 12 minutes. And the reason I bring this up is many people have said to me, you're just hammering down on West County. You're just always giving them the short end of the stick, and you're just, by expanding this jail, you're making it so much harder for the people of West County to do anything with Richmond, to better themselves, etc. And I point out that Dublin has done a remarkable job of having a jail right in its city center, and surrounding it, they have some beautiful parks, they have beautiful homes, and a jail in of itself isn't what's going to be detrimental to a community, it's how the community responds to it. And Stepping Up Initiative is something I am very supportive of. In January, I accompanied our chief probation officer, our public defender, a member of our sheriff's department, our district attorney to Sacramento. And essentially this is an initiative to keep people out of jail who are mentally ill. And you start out by mapping every intercept you have with someone who is mentally ill, who potentially may end up in jail. And once you map that, you say, what more could we do at each of those intercepts to help that person stabilize so that they don't start committing crimes and they don't get into jail. And so at this point, we're going to be having a board workshop on this. We don't have a date determined. It's going to come out of our Office of Reentry and Justice, and I'm looking forward to hopefully this summer moving forward with additional work in that regard. I want to talk a little bit about the county's mental health budget. As you can see here, we spend a considerable amount of money, close to $250 million each year on mental health services. This is through our behavioral health budget, both mental health, alcohol and other drugs, and some of our homeless programs, which rely, we find close to a third are oftentimes mentally ill as well, and oftentimes commit crimes. And so addressing those from a mental health, behavioral health standpoint is critical. These are some of the county programs that we have to address mental health issues, starting with the moment a child is born, recognizing that the prenatal care of a woman has such an outcome on a child's life. Our early childhood education, youth mental health programs, our probation grant that has a phenomenal success, Laura's Law, which was something I heralded us passing, which is assisted outpatient treatment for the severely mentally ill who have been incarcerated as an alternative to going back to jail and going back to hospitalization. Our Mental Health Commission, our county psych services, we have mental health evaluation teams that are out on the streets, following up when someone's picked up for a 5150, showing up the next day to meet with family members, help them get the services, help stabilize that individual if he or she is released. Training for police officers and how to interact with the mentally ill, as well as autistic individuals, and then homeless assistance. And this is just a quick slide showing what we're spending this next year on children's mental health services, about $74 million. And let's talk about ICE, because I'm going to run out of time. Sheriff Livingston, on his website, these are his ICE policies. And essentially, when our sheriff deputies interact with someone on the street, they are not asking for their green card, their citizenship, that's irrelevant. They are interacting with people without any basis, without looking at any basis of their citizenships. They don't participate in ICE sweeps, and if requested, they will notify ICE of someone being released from jail if it is someone who has committed a serious crime. And I think most of you would agree that if someone has committed a serious crime in our community, and if they are here illegally, we probably don't want them to remain in the community. And upon receiving ICE notification, there are policies to notify the inmate, their attorney, and in advance of any interview between ICE and an inmate, the inmate is going to be provided with a written form of consenting or declining to participate with ICE. And that is the level of participation we have. And I think it's critical as we look at those counties that are sanctuary counties versus those that are not. Some cities are sanctuary cities. I think Pittsburgh just took a very reasonable approach of stating these are the principles we base our community on. We're not declaring ourselves a sanctuary county because they don't want to put a target on their back with federal funding. And yes, we've had one court in San Francisco say you can't target sanctuary counties, but as we know, President Trump has indicated that he will be taking that to the Supreme Court. Chief Probation Officer Todd Malecki has a very similar or even a more restrictive policy. In essence, if they get an ICE request, it has to go through a probation chief, through a manager, and they have to have clearance by the chief or the assistant chief. They have not had any requests this year. And we recognize the importance of the rights of immigrants. This is a sample of a card our office hands out. And this past Thursday, I was at an event and had the opportunity to just talk with the Consul General from Mexico. And Consul General Gonzalez is a great man, but what he shared with me is his concern with the fact that many of the immigrants of Mexican ancestry, of Mexican citizenship, are being victimized, and they're afraid to go to the police, they're afraid to report the crimes against them. And that's something that's important to me, that we destigmatize that and help people understand that going to the police, going to a sheriff's deputy is not going to get you arrested by ICE. We want those crimes reported. We don't want people living in fear of reporting crimes and being victimized. Okay, my time is up, so last slide, we're just at almost last slide. Okay, ICE detention, West County Detention Facility, another controversial topic for many. This is a contract we've had with U.S. Marshals since 1992. It's one we've had through every Democrat, Republican administration. We do make 200 jail beds available, up to 200 if they are available. These, as I mentioned, are not jail beds that could be used for mental health. And some of the benefit of this, frankly, is it's closer for detainees, and their families can still visit them. When I was talking to Consul General Gonzalez, he said it's one of the nicest jails, detention centers he's seen in his experience in the Consular Corps. And again, nobody wants to be detained, but this is an opportunity for many families to make a very rough situation a little bit easier. And finally, office, I've got Gail Israel here, Jill Ray of my staff, and I'm always welcome, and you're always welcome to contact me, so thank you.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to kind of roam and talk for a minute. It's an exciting time to be an immigration lawyer right now, I'll tell you that. Quite busy these days, but with that comes a responsibility for me to come to events like this and to share with you what's going on right now in not only our country but locally in terms of the conditions that our immigrant families are facing. So I want to talk mainly about the idea of community, but I also want to talk about trust a little bit. So first, I just wanted to address what's going on here with respect to local law enforcement collaboration with ICE. Specifically, I wanted to point out the probation department. The probation department has changed their policy, as you saw in Supervisor Andersen's slide, but the policy is not a restrictive policy at all. In fact, it's a very opaque policy. The policy is essentially that, a manager will make the decision on whether and to what extent to cooperate with ICE, should ICE contact probation. And so even though probation says that they have not had any requests directly from ICE in 2017, what's important to know is the context of why this became an issue. It came to light that probation was pervasively and actively contacting ICE in order to have ICE try to see if probationers were lawful or here with undocumented status or what their status was. And so it's important to understand the role of probation. Probation's role is to ensure the safe reintegration of people that have had contact and convictions in the criminal justice system back into our community. Again, the word community comes up again, right? And probation's role is to supervise these individuals so that we can make sure that as they are reintegrated into society, it's done safely, to ensure that they get resources that they need, like drug rehabilitation and so forth, and to ensure that they get help finding jobs and so forth. Well, it turns out that many deputy probation officers were deciding on their own to contact ICE. You know, they'd send emails. There was a Public Records Act request put out by the East Bay Express. So we have all these emails where probation would email ICE and say, hey, I have a client named, you know, John Doe. Obviously, it usually wasn't John Doe. It was almost always a Latino surname. And I think this person might be here unlawfully. Can you run them for me? There was even an example where they were asking about the probationer's mother. And this proactive, kind of really close cooperation with ICE was really, really alarming to the Public Defender's Office when we found out about it. We brought it to the attention of Mr. Belleci, the Chief of Probation, and it was at that point that they saw that they had kind of a policy versus a procedure, and they tried to adjust things. But how the actual interaction with ICE occurred with probation is really the worst part. So what happened is ICE would get back to them and in some circumstances say, hey, you know what? Actually, that person, we're interested in that person. Now, can you help us, probation? And probation would go as far as to set up pretextual appointments with probation. So they would say to the probationer, hey, I need you to come in for a probation checkup, right? Now this is somebody that's trying to follow the rules, trying to reintegrate into society, and now the probation officer is saying, hey, you got to come into the office and check in, right? Not telling them why. And they would go in, and lo and behold, they'd bring them into a probation office in the back, and boom, ICE would be right there, arrest the person and take them away. So probation has adjusted that policy to now say that probation officers can't proactively contact ICE in the first instance. But what they haven't said is what happens if ICE, whom they have very close contact with, based on a year's worth of emails that I've been through, what happens if ICE contacts them for help? And probation, Mr. Belleci has even said in a public hearing that they're not willing to foreclose the possibility that in any given circumstance, they would continue with those pretextual ambushes. The Sheriff's Department also engaged in similar conduct, but to their credit, they at least had the dignity to say, well, that was wrong, we shouldn't have done that, and we're not doing that anymore, and to discipline the people involved. So that's part of the structure that we have here in Contra Costa County. And in this current political environment that we have, it is amplifying the very natural senses of alienation and mistrust of government that many of our immigrant families feel. When the federal government is saying what they're saying about immigrants and trying to dehumanize and criminalize immigrants, the people, the members of our community who are either immigrants themselves, I'm an immigrant, or who have immigrant family members, and particularly those who have immigrant family members who may be undocumented, they look to our local government, our local leadership, to say, well, okay, I know that they're saying this on the federal level. What's going on here? And so that mistrust needs to be proactively dealt with. Because what we have here is we have a situation where we have a country that seems very divided right now. And here in Contra Costa County, we're kind of a microcosm. We're such a diverse county. We have we're broad geographically, broad demographically. It's really a beautiful place to live. I love Contra Costa County. I've lived here for 20 years. But I think we need to see that these divisions need to be overcome on the local level by building of community. And what do I mean by that? Something I've noticed recently is people use the term, the immigrant community, or the black community, or this community, or that community. Well, I want to envision a broader concept of community that's just very basic, right? Who are the people that you see around when you go to the store? who's there behind the cash register, right? Is who's cleaning your yard? Who are you working with? You know, we're all one community, but these divisions allow us to stay apart and they make communication very difficult. And that's why environments like this and times when Supervisor Andersen and Claudia Jimenez can come out here and we can talk to everybody are an opportunity for us to really heal and move the dialogue. So I'm actually very excited right now, not just because I get a lot of airtime now that it's a mess because I'm an immigration lawyer, but because in my 16 years as an immigration lawyer, this is the most attention that's been paid to immigrant rights in my entire life. And it's actually very, very good. It's a good thing. So I do want to talk to you about some local things that are happening that can be very exciting for us. It's really an opportunity right now for us to come together as a community and to come together as not just Californians, but as members of the Contra Costa community to figure out how we can model the kind of environment that we want to live in. Do we want to live in an environment where a bulk of our population is living with fear and depression and mistrust? What can we do individually and then collectively to address that? So there's a lot of need going on. I just came from another event at the Latina Center in Richmond, and I did a Know Your Rights training for members of the community and did some private consultations. And I gotta tell you, we're strong, okay? Don't worry, the immigrant families are strong. We're okay. But what we need to happen is we need to encourage this kind of dialogue about what our country and what our county looks like going forward. And to that end, one of the things we need here in Contra Costa County, because I'll be honest, I think we're a little bit slower than some of the rest of the Bay Area counties to take action. And one of the things we need is a rapid response network. They have such a network. They have such a network in San Francisco, in Alameda, Santa Clara, San Mateo, Los Angeles. And I just want to describe to you what it is because I need your help in making it a reality, okay? What it is it's a program by which we can start to eliminate some of the panic and fear. Like Supervisor Andersen was saying, a big concern is this mistrust and this failure of our institutions to reach out and reaffirm that immigrants are part of our community has led to unprecedented levels of drops in reporting of crime, drops in people being able to take their children to get mental health services, and then every once in a while panic spreads because there's a rumor on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter that ICE is somewhere. You know, there was something that happened a little while ago at Costco, and everybody was like, ICE is at Costco. Or, you know, ICE is at Contra Costa College. Suddenly people don't go to school, and, you know, panic spreads. So the first thing that the rapid response networks do, or really we're calling and we're hoping to call the Contra Costa Immigration, Legal, and Education Partnership, is it would have a hotline, a phone number, right? That you could call. If you see ICE activity, or if, lo and behold, ICE is at your door, right, not banging on the door, you can have a phone number to call where somebody will be trained to answer your call, right, to give you advice right there, right away on the phone, and to dispatch volunteers, rapid responders, that will come to the scene to do several things. The first thing they're going to do is verify, right? Is this really something going on? Because we don't want to spread panic, right? It's very important. Nobody wants to live and have panic in their community. You don't want to live in a community where, you know, huge chunks of the school population don't come in because they're afraid, right? Just think about that. Think about what that does to those students' ability to focus, right? So first thing they'll do is verify. Hey, false alarm. It wasn't ICE, it was just the police action. Don't worry about it. But if there is some kind of activity, then the responders can be there. They can respectfully observe, of course, not interfering with any law enforcement action. But then they can also help provide support to the family and gather information. And that brings us to the second exciting thing that happens, which is they will then transmit that information back to the offices of the Rapid Response Network, who can then dispatch attorneys that can go and actually help the person that was detained by ICE in immigration court. so that they can make sure that their rights are protected. You may not know this, but in immigration court, there's no right to a free attorney if you can't afford one. Okay? It's not like criminal court, where if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you free of charge. That's great if you're charged with a crime. But if you're put in immigration detention and they're putting you through deportation proceedings, you only get a lawyer if either you have the money to hire a lawyer, or if there's some kind of nonprofit free program, like we're talking about, that can provide a lawyer for you. About 70% of people in immigration proceedings are unrepresented. No lawyer. 70% of them. And for those 70%, the ones that are detained and facing deportation and don't have lawyers, they only succeed in their immigration cases 11% of the time. But there was a study done by Stanford Law School that in the Bay Area, if somebody is in deportation proceedings and they have a lawyer, they succeed 83% of the time. So that's the disparity. The difference between having a lawyer and not having a lawyer, 11% success versus 83% success. So that's what we're trying to do, to provide support to not only immigrants themselves, but also to their families. And there's a lot of interest in this, and it's a really positive way that as a community we can come together and not only set up a program that can have tangible benefits for not only our immigrant families, but when we benefit our immigrant families, it benefits all of us in the community. And so, when you have kids, I've had kids, I was at an event in Richmond High School, and I had a student stay afterwards and come to me and say, hey, can I ask you a question? And she was just so adorable. I can't even describe it to you. But then she came and she said, I'm going to be 18 in a month, and I want to know, in case something happens to my parents, because they're undocumented, I have 4 little brothers and sisters. What can I do to make sure that I can take care of them if something happens and my parents are deported, right? And it just broke my heart. This is a young woman in her senior year of high school, right? This isn't what should be on her mind right now. But it's the reality, and it's the reality that many of our immigrant families deal with. And she's a U.S. citizen, right? She was born here, and it's impacting her, and thereby it affects her stress levels. It's really, I gotta tell you, it's a public health crisis right now with the trauma that our families are facing. But like I said, immigrants are strong, right? We share lots of qualities across the board, regardless of what country you've come from. I'm an immigrant myself, and immigrants tend to be 3 things. They tend to be courageous, right? To leave your country, go to a whole new place where you don't know the language oftentimes, to try to make a new life. That takes real courage. Immigrants are also resilient, right? They make that trip, they leave that life, and they come to a place that often treats them with aggression, with fear, with dehumanization. And yet, we persevere because we're resilient, and we know that we want to make a good life. And that's the third point. Immigrants across the board tend to be optimistic people, right? We can envision a better life. We can envision a better life for ourselves, for our families, and for our community. And so what I encourage all of you to do right now and going forward in this pivotal time historically is follow our lead. That's what we need to demonstrate. We need to demonstrate courage and resiliency and most of all optimism. We need to truly believe that we can do this. That despite the rhetoric that's going on and the programs being cut across the board federally, not just affecting immigrants but affecting all of us, that despite this assault, we can't allow them to divide us. We have to make closer connections. And so like immigrants, I encourage all of you to continue to be courageous, to go outside of your comfort zone, to communicate with people even when there are language barriers. And as you know, nowadays it doesn't take a language barrier to have communication issues, right? You can talk to somebody and they can be of a different political party, and that can alone be enough to shut down communication. Well, I gotta tell you, we can't do that. We can't afford that right now. In times of stress like this, these are times of great opportunity. These are times that we can really move the needle. History doesn't work in a smooth little line like this, right? There's times of trauma, of tragedy. And it's those times that are filled with opportunity. So I really think that both the Rapid Response Network, but more than that, the attention to not only immigrants' rights, but the way in which immigrants' rights fit in with the larger picture of our community, right? With mass incarceration. The problems of mass incarceration are similar to the problems of mass deportation. And the ripple effects that those have on public health, on education, on everything that happens and affects all of us in our Contra Costa community are really essential connections that we need to not only acknowledge, but we need to explore. And so I really encourage all of you to get involved. We have started a new alliance as the Contra Costa County Immigrant Rights Alliance, where many of the service providers and activists and faith groups have been getting together to talk about these issues and see how we can come together and really make Contra Costa County a beautiful and inspirational place to live. We have an opportunity here, especially in 2018, to reframe how our community deals with many of these issues, not just immigration, but mass incarceration and so forth. And it's incumbent upon us. So I really thank you all for coming out and giving me the time to talk. There's obviously, in terms of immigration, I could talk for hours and hours, so I just wanted to cover a few things for you guys. But I know in the question and answer period we can ask questions and answer questions. And there's a lot of activity, so stay active, stay engaged. Monday is May Day. It's also a big day for immigrant rights. There's going to be a lot of events. We're going to have a table in Todos Santos Plaza. There's a march and so forth. So if you're interested, please get involved. And most of all, reach out. Okay, what I've seen most is that there's a difficulty to talk, and particularly for white people, to talk to immigrants and talk to people these days in this charged environment about immigration rights, about race, about all of those things. We have to have those uncomfortable conversations. We have to do it, and we have to realize that we need to have them because that's where the opportunity lies. That is how we can make community. Without communication, with division is the enemy of community. So that's my request of all of you. Help us make a better community in Contra Costa County. Thank you.
I have some slides. Hello, my name is Claudia Jimenez, and I love to see many of you because I have been working with so many of you for many, many years, and it's a pleasure. So thank you for having me here, and let's try to... So I am a community organizer. I have been working in the county since 2011. Many of the campaigns have been to support communities who are coming home from incarceration and the immigrant community. And we have been involved in many, many issues, and at the county level, particularly around a frame that we call justice reinvestment. So right now, we are in this campaign, Service No Sales, and I am going to explain why we are in this campaign. But who we are? Contra Costa Racial Justice Coalition was created 2 years ago in response of Black Lives Matter, and particularly because the Public Defender Office did this beautiful rally saying Black Lives Matter in our county. And many of the individual public defenders got together with criminal justice advocacy, immigrant advocacy, and it was because our experience has been that communities of color are over-policed in Contra Costa County, and data shows that. And that we have been told that there is no racial disparities in the county whatsoever, according to District Attorney Mark Peterson, after Public Defender Office the beautiful rally saying Black Lives Matter, he went publicly and said, like, they are crazy, there is no racial disparities whatsoever. And this is a quote from a letter that he sent to the head of the public defender department. And one of the things he says is that we train, teach, and practice the notion of colorblindness because all lives matter. Right. So a lot of people say like we know that there is a racial disparities. We know because we encountered that. We live in that. And actually data shows, and I think like Supervisor Andersen shows, that data shows that, in African Americans make up 9.6% of the population in Contra Costa County, but are charged with crimes in 26%. So it's 2.7 times often, right? In the adult experience, again, African Americans make up 9.6% of our population, but African American adults make up 30% of the people on probation. In the youth experience, is more outrageous still, 9.6% of the African American population, but the youth make up 41% in probation. And in the county, go ahead, and in the county juries, again, there is a disparity, 9.6, and they make up 7.5, and then also in county juries for Latinos, Latinos make up 21.3% of the population, but Latinos make up 14.9% of the people in juries. So what it means, what it reads to that is that people who are making the decision of how much time or what is the punishment don't look like me, don't look like people of color most of the time. And that means that they probably don't have the experience to be empathized with the person who is being charged. So we need to change that, and we agree here in this panel that we need to change that. Go ahead. So one of the things that we did was to engage over 300 people in a conversation around the county, over 300 residents in Contra Costa County around what is our vision for a county, what is our vision when we say like justice reinvestment, what that means, what we want to see. And throughout this conversation, what the three main things that people were concerned about is that we need to reform the criminal justice system, including not only incarceration, mass incarceration, but of course immigration was a big part of that. Housing, as we live in the Bay Area, homelessness is a problem. Housing was a mental health and addiction because a lot of people ended up in prison, and this is a snowball because there is a need for more mental health and substance abuse services. And of course, civic participation as a 4 point because a lot of people had lost their right to vote when they ended up in the criminal justice system. Okay. So why we are in this right now? So the jail expansion, as Andersen and Supervisor Andersen said, is a really controversial and it's difficult. But this is not the first time. This is not the first time that the sheriff, David Livingston, wants to expand the jail. In 2012, we had to organize community to fight the use of AB 109 money to expand the jail in West Contra Costa County. And you know that AB 109 money, the intent of that legislation is to reduce recidivism. And to do that, it had been proved, research had proved that services are key part. So in 2012, we were able to stop that jail expansion and to direct over $4 million with the advocacy of community to community services. So it's great because many of the services that Supervisor Andersen showed is also part of the AB 109. AB 109 has been bad. We had to fight for that. You know that $21 million come every year to county because AB 109 money. And many of that money goes to probation, DA, and sheriff. And the intent of that is to reduce recidivism. Go ahead. So in 2012, in 2013, David Livingstone applied for money in 2014, last year, and this year. Last year and this year has been the mental health issue. But what we feel, and what I am quoting Jovanka Beckles, who is a city council in Richmond and worked as a social worker in the county. When she spoke at the Board of Supervisors, she basically said, the mental health issue here is used as an just kind of like an excuse to expand the jail. And this is why we are here with, again, another campaign, or the 4th or 5th campaign, to really stop this idea that our community is better off when we build jail or expand jails. So we want to keep the county funds for county services. We want to keep your taxes to go to services, to go to the program that Ali is saying that is important, right? We want to use that to expand CARES program. The supervisor, some of the supervisors voted to continue support CARES program, which is a program to provide help to undocumented families in Contra Costa. So we want that. And we want to use that to treat mental health people in and out. We are not saying that we don't disagree with the fact that people in jail need services. But what we think that this is not the proposal who is going to allow us as a community to really create the services that are needed. And if this money goes forward, we will lose the opportunity as community members to be engaged in a really serious conversation about what is the good proposal that will serve our communities that are in our jails and outside the jails. Because what we don't want is to continue the criminalization of our mentally ill patients. This is what we don't want. And many people say like, oh, the West County are being the loudest people, the loudest resident. It's just West County. I don't pay attention to West County because it needs to be a county. But of course, this is what I am here. This is what is beautiful to have this conversation in places like this. And thank you for organizing that, Lisa. Thank you all of you for giving this time of your Saturday to come here and to have this debate. But yeah, I am resident of Richmond. And I had 2 kids, small kids. And I want for them the best. And that means that we need services. We need education. We need mental health services. We need sustainability. But one of the things is that in 2014, the same community where the jail expansion is going to be built, right? It lost the only full-size hospital that we have. And yeah, the county has done a good job to provide additional funds to the clinics. And the clinics are really good, but the clinics are not a full-size hospital. If you go there with a heart attack, they have to ship you to other parts. And maybe in that distance you can die. So the importance of losing that, also, and then the thing is that we lost that in the same year County Board of Supervisors were voting to support the jail expansion in the same community. Right? Then think about this. The Contra Costa Regional Medical Center, the county hospital, has 23 beds for mentally ill patients. If the jail expansion proposal with the mental health goes, that they are saying that they are going to they are going to expand the jail on 420 beds. 32 beds of that will be to provide treatment to severe mentally ill patients. That will be the larger mental health facility that we will have available in the county. So yeah, we are creating services for mental health, but guess what? You have to be incarcerated to have these services, these additional services. And yes, we also say, like Sheriff Livingstone have renting 200 beds. There is some technical things about we cannot use this for mental health. But this is the thing, is like you are expanding capacity, but you are using your capacity for other needs than the county needs. Go ahead. So this is the project, the controversial project. It will create 420 maximum security beds, 32 of these beds for mental health treatment, serious mental health. That will cost from the general reserve funds for construction to over 20 million to the county. So he's applying for $70 million to the state. And he gets $70 million, but it's not free money. It can attach with what we had to put. And that is coming from general or reserve funds. Over 20 million for just one-time construction. And look at, like, Sheriff is planning to use 2.5 million of the AB 109 funds that he gets to reduce recidivism, and that is for non, to build a maximum security jail. So he's taking that money for non-serious,
non-sexual, non-violent.
Thank you. To build a high security jail. So that, I don't know, but that doesn't, kind of like, I can understand that. But then, he's additional, there is no money from the state to the operation cost. So the operation cost, the annual operation cost is going to get out of our taxes, from general or reserve funds. And he's asking over $5 million. And when you look at the proposal, 40% of that money will be to pay deputy sheriff, sworn deputy sheriff. Right? So when we are talking about mental health facility and providing this for mentally ill patients, and you see that 40% of the money goes to the department that is not the expert on that issue, then it's a red flag, or at least for me, and I hope that for all of you as well. Go ahead. And I am going. So, and then it's not just about, this is not just about we are against the sheriff proposal. It's about what is our vision for the county when we talk about justice reinvestment. It's like how we take this money that goes from mass incarceration to provide services in a community that allow our community to thrive. And we see that the sheriff's share of general fund expenditures has increased by more than 26%, while the health services 1% from 2010 to 2015, and this is California Nurses Association, thank you for all the data. SEIU 1021, thank you for all the data. This year, Contra Costa County Employee and Human Services Department is facing over $6 million in cuts in the 2000 budget. Social workers, healthcare, and home care provider services will be impacted. So we are saying we don't have money, $6 million money to provide services for seniors, who are going to be impacted in CONS, mental health patients, but we are saying yes to a jail expansion over 5 million from the reserve, probably general or reserve funds. And this is how the Contra Costa County General Fund expenditure had been, and you see like that Law and Justice Functional Group and charities have been just skyrocket, not skyrocket, but more than the other services. So justice reinvestment is really think about what are the services that we need as a community to be more safer community, to be a better community that is benefits everybody, all of us. Right, go ahead. We had already built 1,937 jail beds across 3 jails. And this is the numbers. Go ahead. The charity had managed these, the same books for over 15 years. They had been approximately 25,000 bookings into Contra Costa jail system each year, and the average length to stay in jail is usually short, perhaps 30 days. So what we need to do is, instead of thinking about expanding a jail or putting this money, let's think about what is our best option. What is our best option and proposal to really address all the needs that we have. So we don't need to expand, and even though they said that you won't expand bed capacity, we don't, like there is a lack of trust. We don't know if the crime spike, that Sherry will open the module that he's saying that he's going to close and buy other beds and put more jails. And it was a debate in the BOS, and it wasn't addressed and it wasn't answered. Go ahead. So a new, and this is like what is happening. So a new poll result was released last Thursday. And it was throughout the county. And what the people say is that what we need is services, healthcare, mental health, because that things prevent people to go to jail in the first place. If we have these services, we can be better off and we don't need more services. And this is what you said. It was a poll asking you what you said. And this is like, do you support or oppose the expansion of West County? It's not just West County that says no. It's the majority of people in Contra Costa County. So we are asking the leadership in Contra Costa to really step up and support us. I'm going to go because my time. So there is a many option, and I think like, go ahead. What we need is to start invest in better options. According to the charity department, having a person in the jail, it costs $106 per day. And it's so far beyond the cost of other intervention. We are talking about mental health and reducing mental health. Go ahead. So we must invest in effective program and policies. There is Terry Cooper, an expert on mental health in jails, who is coming to have a debate about that on May 13th in Brentwood. And he emailed and he wrote a letter to every supervisor saying like there are some other things, other programs, diversion programs that we can use that are more cost effective than just build a jail for treating mentally ill patients. So 70% of people in jail are pre-trial. What means that they haven't been on sentence. So why we don't do a better and more good programs to release people before, so we don't have this overcrowding. Go ahead. And we should the thing is we should be maximizing alternatives. And this is again The polling result, 50% of the Contra Costa residents, recent survey think our sheriff's department should not collaborate with U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. He should be listening. He is elected official. Go ahead. And another thing, Nancy Skinner is against that. And she posed, she is leading a Bill 630 bill that it passed the Public Protection Committee and is on the Senate floor. Of course, the Sheriff's Association is against it. And the last thing is, when we don't have trust, because we see the ambushes, when you look at the criminal justice system and start digging, you find out that the county was charging illegally juvenile fines and fees of families that their kids ended up being in jail, but they were found innocent, or they were not charged of the crime. They still were charging them. That was an illegal practice that they put a memorandum, kind of like stopping, and we hope that it stopped forever, right? And when we see this practice of the Sheriff Livingston bullying El Cerrito because they don't agree with the sheriff, with the expansion of the jail, saying that he's going to back out of $2.5 million dispatch contract. And at the same time, he's telling our immigrant community that he cannot back out of the ICE contract because it brings $3 million, but he is ready and willing to back out of a $2.5 million contract to provide some services to El Cerrito. That doesn't go well with us. And this is why we are fighting. It's about like, we have lost the trust. Go ahead. When we see that the same day that the Board of Supervisors approved the jail expansion and they didn't disclose that same day Sheriff Livingston was meeting with Jeff Sessions. And he was not the nominee at this time. He was with other 5 sheriffs, 2 of them being sued because their anti-immigrant stand. That doesn't build trust. And when you see also that the DA in Contra Costa got fined because he was using campaign funds for his own thing, and he was fined over $45,000. And he's the district attorney. He has to prosecute people who do the same thing. What is it like? That doesn't build trust with us. So, I'm sorry, I'm taking. So, what we are saying is, Contra Costa County leaders have a choice: invest in our communities or neglect our communities. And this is what this conversation is about. It's not about a jail expansion. It's a conversation of where our values are and where you put the money so that values are reflected in a budget. Thank you.
In response to policies of the Trump administration, it began at the county and across the nation when volunteers organized, hosted an event to implement the ACLU Freedom Cities campaign. People Power volunteers were asked to put pressure on elected officials and law enforcement officials to urge the adoption of 9 model state and local law enforcement policies that counter cooperation with the Trump anti-immigrant and anti-refugee agenda. On the 11th of March, 12 separate People Power meetings were hosted throughout Contra Costa County. Over 200 people attended. Today's event grew out to the need to educate activists and the public's concern around law enforcement issues in Contra Costa County. So again, thank you for hosting us here and everyone who came out. And we will start the Q&A as soon as we get the question cards. Let's see here. And if it's specifically for an individual of our speakers, please put their name on top, that would be helpful. Why not reduce the number of inmates who are awaiting trial and can't afford bail? Why not reduce bail amount?
And that is something that the state is looking at, and certainly, as someone asked me ahead of time, the county, even though it's Contra Costa Superior Court, We don't have the jurisdiction to mandate that. That's something that the state legislature is looking at. Certainly, as the public defender and prosecutors, district attorney's office make bail requests before the judge as to whether or not someone should be released on their own recognizance, I think there's certainly support in appropriate situations, and I think that's something that we've always looked for is what is the benchmark, what model do we use to assess someone's risk of not showing up in court. And there have been through AB 109, which is the funding available, some great programs to try to help people show up for court appearances. So again, we'll wait and see what happens at the state level.
Ali, did you want to?
Well, yeah, there is a bail reform bill currently in the state Senate. And I think it's very important that you all read that. On the state level, there's a lot of great, really innovative, cutting-edge legislation that's being put forward to address the problems that I mentioned in my talk with mass incarceration and mass deportation. So we need to get involved with that, but it's not just on the state level. On the local level, the district attorney's office does have a lot of discretion and a lot of power vis-a-vis the criminal justice system and what approach they're going to take. So I encourage you not only to get involved with respect to your legislators, but also to find out what the policies are of your local district attorney's office, and whether or not they're in line with the kind of current innovative streak of really re-looking at our systems of mass incarceration, the racially disparate impacts that both Supervisor Andersen and Claudia Jimenez pointed out, and to look at new ways to do it, smarter ways that are both fiscally responsible, help public safety, and respect the dignity and equality of all the members of our community. So I think it's not only on the state level, but it really comes home and starts with your elected district attorney as well.
And just the program that is right now in Contra Costa County gives people out is really minimal. So 20% of people give that. So I think like here is an opportunity to see like how we are going to get all these places. A program that really made through and help to get people out with the bail reform. Because we have 70% of people in free trial. So it's in good direction, but we need to be more aggressive in terms of doing it.
Thank you. 30 seconds here on this question here. It's an ICE question. How can all of you on the panel monitor the Contra Costa Sheriff's relationship with ICE? And how do you suggest that we concerned members of Contra Costa do to influence the Sheriff's Office? Candace.
Well, for me, I think that the sheriff has articulated a very reasonable policy in the level of which he will cooperate with ICE, which is turning over those offenders who are violent, serious offenders. And so I think that's a reasonable policy. He has made very clear he is not going to have his officers out on the street rounding up people as part of ICE raids. And again, having a reasonable policy in place are the ones that, and articulating those to the community are to be the most effective ways to allay some of the concerns that are there.
I would say that it kind of goes to the trust issue that was discussed as well. Our sheriff does have some policies that have been updated and kept in line with the good legislative work that's coming out of Sacramento. However, first of all, minor correction, in terms of the sheriff sharing information with respect to people in the jail and letting ICE, facilitating ICE's picking up of those people, it's not only serious and violent felonies, which is kind of a term of art for strikes. You guys have probably heard like 3 strikes and all that. So it's actually broader than that. It's pretty much any felony previous conviction. So it's a broad thing, but the sheriff doesn't have to be doing it, is the point. And it kind of goes to the resource question that Claudia was raising. You know, we have a certain set number of dollars locally to spend on local issues. And the question is whether or not we want to spend those dollars to assist the federal government's mass deportation machine, or whether we want to make sure that our elected officials, and the sheriff is an elected official, that they spend their money doing the things that we care about, community safety.
I think I will add that bottom line, we need to stop the ICE contract, because I feel like that is also for us a window that doesn't allow, like that it becomes confused for us to say like what is the relationship, and we can like measure the relationship, and he can say like I don't have the relationship because I don't do outside the work, but he has a relationship, he has a contract, and I think that is something that we need to advocate to stop. We don't need ICE in our communities, and we don't need Sheriff Livingston doing business with the Immigration Custom and Enforcement. And that is really key, because the message that our undocumented immigrant community is receiving is that there is a relationship, whether or not is how you put it out there, is on the news. And that is creating a lot of mistrust and a lot of fear in the community at the point that people are not using a lot of services because they are really afraid. And in this moment in time where we have this administration at the 45th saying that he is going to deport every single immigrant in our communities, that is really key. We don't want our community leaders or elected officials to have to do any relation. And that means ICE contract needs to stop. And maybe he can put them, like, he can fill the budget of this $3 million with the contract that he is denying to do with El Cerrito.
Thank you, Claudia. Actually, just a follow-up, because I'm sure the audience, this isn't a question, but it is kind of a follow-up to it. So 2 of the 3 panelists have said to end the contract with ICE. Has that been explored, and is there any efforts around that? And Candace Andersen, any comment on that?
Not from the Board of Supervisors. The sheriff is a directly elected officer, and this is a contract that I mentioned has been entered into since 1992. And while there's this idea that it sends a bad message to the community, at the same token, ICE is going to continue to detain individuals just as they did at an even greater level under the Obama administration to date. And again, not knowing what President Trump is going to do in the future. But again, this contract is one of the few areas in the Bay Area where someone who is detained will have access to their family. It's a very nice facility. They have access to classes, to other opportunities. And they would not, and again,
Excuse me.
and again, I recognize not everyone agrees with it, but nevertheless, it's a much better facility than being stuck in Arizona or Texas, further away from family and friends. Nevertheless, the Board of Supervisors is not advocating one way or another on this contract, other than Supervisor Joya, who has indicated his desire to see it end. The other 4 supervisors have not expressed that same opinion.
Thank you. This is for you, Ali. You discussed the role of the police officers and sheriffs with cooperating with ICE. What role has the DA's office played in reporting undocumented defendants or witnesses to ICE?
That's an excellent question, and it's difficult to answer because, unfortunately, oftentimes, when somebody is detained by ICE and taken away, it's hard to know. So I only have anecdotal evidence from my long career as a criminal defense attorney here. It has happened in the past that deputy district attorneys have contacted ICE about individual cases. I don't know right now if the district attorney's policy, if the district attorney has a specific policy with respect to cooperation with ICE, but I can tell you that in terms of trying to be in line with recent state laws that have said that district attorneys need to actually work in their plea negotiations to actively help avoid adverse immigration consequences and consider the avoidance of adverse immigration consequences as a factor in the plea negotiations. That's been a difficult adaptation in my personal experience for our current district attorney in his office. to meet. There's a lot of resistance to it. However, again, times are changing, so hopefully we're going to make headway, and you know, it's good to see all this level of civic engagement. Hopefully it doesn't end with today, but it continues on, and it continues on in 2018 and the next election cycle.
I think this is another one for you, so you're going to be here on the focal point. Is there a rapid response network being set up here in Contra Costa County? And to the county panel, can you comment on the California Sanctuary letter that Nancy Skinner billed, the SB 630? Go ahead. Why don't we start with number one?
Sure.
Can you talk about the network being set up for the rapid response?
Well, we're working on it. It's a delicate dance because we're trying to find, you know, community partners that are in and of the community where they're trusted by our immigrant families to host some of these services. We're working very closely with many foundations and private funders who, again, silver linings of this time in history, they're actually interested in programs like this. And also trying to work with the Board of Supervisors to see if they would be receptive to also participating in a program like this so that we can have matching funds and leverage county dollars and county institutions as well as local community-based organizations with foundation money. So it's a complicated process to set up. Fortunately, there's some very good models in our neighboring counties, and we're working on it very hard. And it's actually been referred to the Finance Committee of the Board of Supervisors, chaired by Supervisor Mitchoff. And we're going to continue to work with the county to see if the county is willing to participate and put resources toward this. And regardless of what the county does, we're going to continue to work with funders to see if we can get something started because the need is very urgent. So it's a push and pull always of government moving slowly, sometimes slower than we'd like, and the need being existing right now.
So the second question is to the whole panel is, can you comment on Nancy Skinner's bill SB 63, which is limiting California funds for jail expansions to local law enforcement? So Candace, why don't we start with you?
And as you might suspect, I am not supportive of that. As I set forth, we're doing a lot to address mental health in our community. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on many different levels. But the problem we have is those who continue to cycle through the jails and don't receive the treatment during their period of incarceration. And as we have been expanding our role because of AB 109 of how long we have criminal defendants in our custody and control, we need to be able to do more while they are in jail. And so for me, I think it's critical that we have this opportunity. You know, this was a $70 million grant. It wasn't to build a new hospital. It wasn't to implement mental health programs. It was to improve within the jail our mental health services is one opportunity. Is one opportunity. So for me, having, you know, I respect Representative Skinner. She's a great advocate on many issues. I just don't agree with her on this particular one.
Ali, 30 seconds if you can on the SB.
I think Claudia would be...
Oh, okay, Claudia.
So we have been working with Nancy Skinner, and she's a great leader, and we, of course, support that because we don't think that resources should be allocated to counties that are renting a space to public or private entities to use it for outside needs, outside county needs. And I think like we are with her. She has been great. It passed the Public Protection Committee last Tuesday and is on the floor of the Senate. We think that this is the right direction to go. And even if we said these funds money that are coming from the Board of State and Community Correction, it's just in the, like, when you look at, like, they say, like, oh, for mental health facility, but when they look at, you look at that, it's just for construction. It's just one-time construction. And if we are looking about, like, how we implement and provide mental health services for people in jail. We need to think about just more holistic about that, not just like expanding a jail with 420 beds and 32 of that beds allocated to mentally ill patients. So I think it's the right direction, and I'm glad that Nancy Skinner is taking that lead, and she understands that. Remember when in 2012, Lonnie Hancock was in that position, and she came to Contra Costa and was against the jail expansion in that time because she fought really hard to get the county, to get Contra Costa County to get more money from AB 109, and she was outrageous that the fight that she put there to get that money so we can reduce recidivism in Contra Costa County was going to be used for expanding the jail. At that time, it wasn't for mental health, and it was 240 beds. So every year, the proposal had asked a little more beds and a little more beds and a little more beds.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm sorry, I'm
No,
get through all these
okay.
questions here. This is for Supervisor Candace Andersen. Can you explain from a purely fiscal point of view why it is a good policy to spend scarce county resources to expand the jail at the same time that the county social service workers and other county employees who provide services are facing layoffs because of county budget shortfalls?
Well, in the budget cuts we are seeing in our in-home supportive services, in our social work, are coming from the state that is changing their funding formula of how we fund those services. So it's not us saying, let's take this money from there and instead put it toward jails. And as you probably know, or maybe you don't, we have about a $3.5 billion budget in Contra Costa. Many of those, much of that money isn't in our general fund, the majority of it's not, but it's through pass-through programs through the federal government, through the state program. And so what we're trying to do on the Board of Supervisors is look at these issues from so many different levels. And the mental health issue is one where, yes, we would love to keep people out of jail who are mentally ill. And that's why we have so many programs in place. But again, we've got to look at what are we going to do for those who pose a danger to society because they do commit crimes, because of substance abuse, because of other mental health issues. How do we treat them appropriately during that short period of time in which we have them? I would like to highlight too that within our jail system, we have probably the highest record in the state of California for doing shorter sentences, for split sentences. In our county, we don't believe in just broad across the board mass incarceration. We really are looking at programs that combine a much shorter stay in jail as well as programs finding the supportive housing, finding those opportunities, but it really, to address the mental health component, this is just one small segment of our budget where I think the dollars will pay off in the long run, where we will see with the success of this program, we would see far fewer people cycling back through the jail at much greater expense.
I have several for you, Supervisor Andersen. What are the net $3 million from the ICE contract here used for? Does any of it go towards services for immigrants, such as legal services, or for undocumented detainees?
It goes right back into the sheriff's budget, and he has a fairly robust budget. So no, it does not go back into services for individuals. It stays in the sheriff's budget.
Next question, what is your understanding as an individual rather than as a county official of white privilege?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed about being a county supervisor as opposed to a city council member is you get to really address those issues in society that are so important, such as poverty, such as homelessness, such as mental health, such as reform of justice systems. And so to me, what I see, I don't know that I would term it white privilege, but I as a county supervisor get to look at what funding can I put in our preschools. Yesterday I was out at our George Miller Head Start preschool. What can I do to help an 18-month-old child who lives in poverty through our allocations of funding so that they will be successful when they start kindergarten, that they start school. So, you know, my understanding is really, as a white woman elected official, I have the opportunity to help change lives throughout the county, regardless of the district, and using our resources where we can hopefully continue to elevate the education level of all individuals.
Next question, taking a stand, deciding not to be a sanctuary to avoid targeting is succumbing to extortion. We need to act on our values and needs rather than responding to threats and bullying. How can you say a choice to avoid targeting has integrity?
I've got to say there are a lot of people in Contra Costa County who don't want a sanctuary county for a lot of different reasons. I probably received as many emails from individuals in my district, many of them who are first-generation immigrants themselves, who are very concerned about that. I think there's a fear that when you go forward with the sanctuary county, you do lose the ability to have those individuals who commit serious crimes to be deported, that you lose that level of cooperation. Now, I did not vote for Donald Trump. Okay, I have very serious concerns about him as a president. He makes me very nervous. At the same time, I'm not willing to jeopardize the millions of dollars, the federal dollars my county receives to help the very poorest among us by making a political statement, we are going to be a sanctuary county. What we do is we implement policies that protect all individuals, whether they're an immigrant or not, whether they're in the country legally or not. We set policies, as you've seen, as I articulated, from the Sheriff's Department, from the Chief Probation Officer. I'm not aware I have no knowledge of what is or is not happening in the District Attorney's Office. But again, you create a community, an environment where you have policies, where in all of our healthcare centers in our county, policies are made very clear that this lobby is an area of treatment, and therefore someone who is an ICE agent would not be allowed into a lobby of one of our medical facilities because it's a treatment area. And so you create a level of safety within the community, and you don't have to poke an eye in the stick of a tiger saying we're going to become a sanctuary county. You do it in other ways that provide that same safety and security.
Thank you. This is just for the whole panel. I recently visited individuals held in the Immigration Detention Center at the West County facility with an organization called Civic. This is what we found. People are being held in jail who have not committed any crime. Asylum seekers are mandatorily detained. 2, difficult for people to call their lawyers and family because of the money required to make phone calls. And 3, different treatment for women than men. Women only get 1 hour outside, and many times not even that. What can we do to change this?
I'd like to address that briefly, because I think that raises kind of one of the most insidious strategies of our current federal administration, which is the increased criminalization of immigrants. Now, this criminalization is nothing new in this country. It's happened for a long time, particularly with our black brothers and sisters from slavery onward. And one of the things that this administration is doing is they're trying to redefine criminality, to expand the definition of it explicitly. I mean, that's what Trump's executive order and the memos explicitly said. And so even though those individuals in the ICE detention facility don't have criminal records in the way that we would think about them, because we think of crime as crime, right? Some kind of violation of somebody's personal space, property rights, or whatnot. But the administration has redefined that to be any violation of the civil rules, okay? So if you were a little infant and you were brought across the border without inspection, now they're saying you're a criminal, right? And if you had a visa that expired, now you are a criminal. And so I just wanted to address that criminalization piece, because I think that's very, very important, and we need to be very, very careful, because part of what's happening with the dialogue and part of why we're not able to communicate on these issues very well is because people are buying it. People are actually buying it. And when you do that, when you criminalize entire races or groups of people, then you cease to see their humanity and you cease to hold yourself accountable to doing your part in trying to communicate and build community. So I just wanted to mention that part. And in terms of the detention facility, it is, it's a really difficult position that people are put in and their families. The phone calls is actually a very interesting issue because the jails, whether you're an immigrant or not, making phone calls in jail and having access to your family has become a commodity that is controlled by corporations that are really charging people outrageous rates just to basically have basic communication with people. And again, this ties in with mental health and physical health and all of those other things. I mean, think about the children that aren't able to communicate with their family that's in custody due to the lack of resources. So I have mixed feelings about the jail detention facility because, as Supervisor Andersen pointed out, she's not incorrect. That detention facility, for an ICE detention facility, is actually pretty good. It has better resources than most of the other detention facilities that I've been to, okay? But that's not all we look at, right? Something that Claudia said really stuck with me, right? Where you put your money and your resources as a county reflects your values. And in this particular environment that we're in, even though it may seem that they're getting certain more resources, we can't have in this environment our elected official, our sheriff, having this kind of collaboration with ICE when we have that little girl that I met at the high school that is more focused on that than on anything else that's going on in her life. We need to send that message.
We have exceeded our time, but I just want a hand raise. Is it okay if we extend? Because we do have a lot more questions here, and so I just want to make sure to be sensitive to everyone's time and our panelists. If we extend another 10 minutes and see.
I'm fine if we go to 3:30 is perfect.
Okay.
I do have another commitment. I apologize that I've got to get
So in the essence of time, I'm going to try and see if we can try to keep our response. No, that's not to you. So we can get through some of these. Did you want to comment, Supervisor Andersen, on?
Fine.
Okay. Okay, great. Next question we have is actually I'll finish with you with Ali. Can lay people be trained in immigration basics to fill the gap for those that cannot afford an attorney?
Well, it depends on how much training you're talking about, but you can be trained in ways to help. So one of the things that is really exciting about the rapid response networks that have been popping up elsewhere is that part of it is to train volunteer rapid responders. So you don't have to be an attorney to be somebody that gets trained in basic kind of know your rights information and is able to be trained in the verification process and go to the scene. So there are going to be many opportunities if we do manage to get a rapid response network in Contra Costa County for people to be involved. But it's very, very important to understand that immigration law is, in my experience, one of the most complex and evolving areas of law. And so it's really important to get real good immigration advice when you're talking about people's lives. And unfortunately, there's a lot of notarios or paralegals out there that kind of put themselves out to the community as trained professionals, and sometimes they're not. And it can really hurt people. Actually, there's licensed lawyers that sometimes put themselves out that way and don't do their jobs right. So I wouldn't encourage people to try to learn all of immigration law, but there are ways to get involved.
General question, provision does the Board of Supervisors have any data on how services are actually, open after hours for working families?
And I'm assuming just services of any kind, and absolutely. There's an effort to make services available, whether it be health services or others, at hours where people can access them, recognizing that those who are most in need of services may not be able to show up between 9 and 5. And one of the best things we've really done is so much electronic where just by accessing via computer, you can sign up for services, you can check on the status of services, and you can, with our volunteers working, you could get people signed up if they show up at the food bank on an iPad to sign up for CalFresh. So again, we recognize that not everyone's available 9 to 5, and we're trying to get rid of the county model, the old government model that at 5 o'clock everything shuts down, and too bad for you if you're not, at the door by that time.
A follow-up question for you, Supervisor Andersen. How much will be used in the proposed budget to be used for mental health services for the new jail? And what makes the Sheriff Department qualified to promote mental health services?
Right now, we don't have any money allocated this year for the new jail because we don't, the jail grant, we won't know till June. It would not be part of this upcoming fiscal year. What we would be doing is, just as we do currently in our jails, all mental health, behavioral health services go through our health department, and so they would be contracted out in some cases, provided by in-house as well. And so no, the sheriff himself is not an expert, but because we do have a very robust mental health services through our county health department, we are able to then identify what are the best practices, what can we do to provide the optimal services.
I'm just going to continue with the cards for you since you have to.
I'm here.
Another question for Supervisor Andersen is, Mr. Saidi raised several disturbing questions regarding the county probation department. What can and should the Board of Supervisors do to address these concerns?
And we already have. And as I showed on the slide, we made sure that the probation, excuse me, I'm getting over week 3 of bronchitis. The the chief probation officer implemented policies. He has attested to the fact that should anyone get a request from ICE to cooperate, it has to be approved by him. And then he is, I believe, in the process of formulating under what circumstances there would be cooperation, which would be very similar with the Sheriff's Department, that someone is a serious offender. In most cases, someone who has either his current conviction would be a felony or he was a serious violent offender, serious felony in previous convictions as well.
Thank you. Next question for Supervisor Andersen. If the Trump threat to remove federal funds from sanctuary cities or counties and counties continue to stop these courts in the court process, would the County Board of Supervisors reconsider in declaring a sanctuary city?
I don't know. That would be one. It's interesting, as I mentioned, both myself, my other supervisors, hear from a lot of individuals who do not want to see us become a sanctuary county for a number of reasons. Many times it is people who immigrated here legally, and they're concerned that we played by the rules, and so is it fair that others receive blanket sanctuary? They're concerned about crime, they're concerned about violence. Whether we would, I think it all depends upon where it goes with the courts, and then where the Trump administration is going. Whether we see that would be an important declaration to protect the individuals in this community. Currently, the policies, as I mentioned, we have in place, I believe, are protecting individuals to not have our county officials, our county sheriff's department interacting with ICE in such a way that is contributing to innocent individuals who just are living here being affected.
Thank you. Another question for you is, the sheriff is also getting $33 million for a new headquarters. Why is the county pouring so much money into law enforcement? How will the money spent help our communities?
Okay, and it's not a new headquarters per se, it's a new emergency operations center that will also have some administrative capability. As you may be aware, as we've looked at our tall, ugly county administration building, it right now has about $23 million in repairs that are needed. And so we did make a decision as a Board of Supervisors to tear down that building and build a much smaller, low-level building in Martinez. And with that, currently, the sheriff's administrative staff does take up 3 floors of the current county administrative building. And so we have for some time been looking at upgrading our emergency operations center, which is what we need in a disaster. And as most of us who have lived in California recognize, it's not if the big one comes, it's when the big one is going to come. And with wildfires, with terrorist threats, with other dangers that are out there, we think it's very important that we do upgrade the Emergency Operations Center. So we are budgeting to do that. It will be something that we're looking at different funding mechanisms, whether we use bonds or whether we, in essence, do sort of like a mortgage. We will be moving forward. And again, when you've got a $3.5 billion budget, you're balancing so many competing needs. And one is community safety, and one is being prepared for disasters, but you're balancing that with our human services of how do we address poverty, how do we address those individuals who don't have enough to eat, how do we help those, how do we balance that with creating more affordable housing, and not just for those who are living at the poverty level, but for all people who are the working individuals, the middle class. How do we create more jobs? So it's a balancing act of identifying where resources should go, and this was one where we felt it was important that we get this EOC going and adding that when we were just placing the sheriff's admin building, or admin floors rather.
And I'll just do a time check for you. It's last question for you. Has the county or will the county supervisors disavow the sheriff's decision to pull out of the El Cerrito dispatch? What do you think his decision? What do you think his decision was in pulling out of that contract?
Well, and again, as I mentioned before, he's an elected sheriff and he gets to make these decisions without our weighing in on it. My understanding in reading the letter that he sent to El Cerrito was a feeling of frustration on his part that when you enter into a memorandum of understanding with other outside agencies, you want to have a cooperative working relationship. You want to work well together. I was dealing with a similar situation when I was trying to build a joint fire station with MOFD and Contra Costa Fire right on the border of Lafayette and Moraga. As we got into the details, we realized that the two agencies' fire departments' culture was so different sometimes, and we were having so many problems just negotiating the details of how we would build a firehouse. We didn't think from a long-term perspective it would make sense for us to work and have this joint fire station. In reading the sheriff's letter to El Cerrito, when they wrote the letter saying we oppose the sheriff's direction he's going with mental health expansion of the jail, in his assessment it was, we're not going to have a positive working relationship. We don't have that level of trust that you need to have. And so that was, again, that's my understanding of why he pulled out. And I reading that on face value. I've not had a discussion with Sheriff Livingston about this, but that was my understanding of why he articulated his decision to pull out.
Thank you. And the last question, and then I know you need to go. And the last ones are for you, Ali. We have 4, so we can let Supervisor Andersen part. How does that sound? Are there any ICE detainees? Are they currently separated from the other criminals incarcerated, and are they being provided schooling, mental health, and job training while in prison?
They are able to avail themselves to those services. It's my understanding, and probably Ali would know better than me. I believe that they are in a separate, my understanding is they are in a segregated area of the jail, but they do have the opportunity to avail themselves to the services that other inmates have at the West Detention Facility.
Can I just briefly say, it's important to note, well, yes, they do have access to the other programs. There is, unfortunately, some intermingling that has to happen as a result of taking advantage of some of those programs. But I just want to, I know the question was phrased in a way, there's also the presumption of innocence. So don't just assume that anybody that's in jail is a criminal or guilty of something. So I just wanted to make that point.
I want to thank Supervisor Andersen. You made yourself so available to us when we reached out to you. You gave us all kinds of possibilities for calendaring this. And she knew it was the ACLU. She knew it was going to be a
I knew you weren't going to love all my answers, okay?
So thank you for putting yourself out there.
That's what I'm represent every single person who lives in my district, and no, we're not going to always agree on every topic, but I know there are a lot of things we do agree upon, and those are those opportunities I love for us to work together on those issues. I'm always available by email, by phone call, by setting up a meeting, and thank you for inviting me. So, thank you.
Our moderator wants to keep going, and apparently a couple of our speakers want to keep going, so that's what we're going to talk about doing. There is coffee outdoors, and also there are people operating tables. Looks like people are ready to give it up.
So we have 5 questions left and we pretty much are done. So if you guys, I know you came out here, so if your question hasn't been answered yet, I'm happy to go through the last remaining 5 because they're all for Senor Ali here. So. Yeah, I can hang out.
If you want to talk, just.
So why don't, I'll have you guys do 2 closing remarks then, and I'll give you the cards, Ali, and you can, I want to thank you guys as well, so why don't you guys just do a closing remark?
Thank you for having us, and thank you for being part of this discussion. I'm excited about the People Power events and kind of mobilization that's going on countrywide, and I really want to thank Lisa and everybody else for putting this together. And ultimately, I just want to loop back to the idea of community and putting in some work. It's not going to be pretty, and I know we don't agree on everything all the time, and emotions are hot, and that's okay. We have to use that. We have to use these times of stress and discomfort to make change, and that starts with you. So thank you for being a part of it.
Well, as a community organizer, I always have next steps for all of you. So the next steps are, if you agree that services, not sales, you want to support it. May 17th, the Board of State and Community Correction Executive Committee is meeting to score the proposal. We are asking all of you to call them and say, like, we don't want this. Contra Costa County doesn't need a jail expansion named as mental health facility. We are so this service no sell is a campaign to really engage community and really make this as part of an education so people can be involved in the budget hearing, in the budget decisions, and advocate for services in our community. So we are hosting events May 13th in Brentwood. We are going to have Terry Coopers, a mental health specialist, that is going to talk about what is mental health and what is the option that we have instead of a jail in our communities to treat and to give opportunity to mentally ill patients. And then we are if you want to be part of Contra Costa County Racial Justice Coalition, there is an outside table. Please sign up. We will make sure that you will be part of our email Google list, and then you will get more support. And if you are a data person and you want to know more about data and why we are saying no to this and this doesn't make sense, go to the bhcreinvestment.com, bhcreinvestment.com, and there has been a lot of research done by Jessica Flinto in 4 counties, Contra Costa County, and she had done a wonderful research brief around the housing, mental health, and substance abuse services and what could be other options, because we don't need a jail and we don't need to put our money in jail expansion. We need services in our community. Thank you.
Concluded our session, so thank you, and lastly want to thank our host Lisa, Julie, for all your effort, and everyone else who helped them support this and put this event on. So
thanks to our wonderful moderator and also to the church. Pastor Ann, thank you very much for donating this beautiful space. And thanks to all of you for coming. There is coffee outdoors. We hope you'll stay and chat.